Roger Waters, former bassist and former primary lyricist for Pink Floyd for a number of years, had his publishing agreement with music rights company BMG severed recently. From The Guardian, the Germany-based company had signed a publishing agreement with the 80-year-old musician in 2016 and was scheduled to release a newly recorded version of Pink Floyd's 1973 album Dark Side of the Moon last year, but ultimately scrapped the release upon hiring Thomas Koesfeld as CEO. The re-recording was ultimately released by the UK-based record label Cooking Vinyl. So BMG already severed their recording deal with Roger last year, and now they're severing their publishing deal with Roger, essentially severing all ties they have with him. This is primarily because he has been a staunch critic of Israel's treatment of Palestinians for a number of years at this point, and because of his strong opposition to the Israeli government, he has been repeatedly smeared as an anti-Semite. Here's some more from the article. The rockers remain defiant over numerous backlashes, such as a German police investigation over a Nazi-style uniform worn on stage in Berlin last year. This Nazi-style uniform that the article references is a leather jacket with an armband, a similar armband to what the Nazis wore, but instead of a swastika on it, it is two hammers. This has been a staple of his live performances of The Wall for a long time at this point. Roger's live shows play heavily into theatrics, as The Wall was a heavily theatrical album. The entirety of The Wall follows a burnt-out, drug-abusing rock star whose isolation consumes him. The character, as an adult, is still suffering from metaphorical scars he received from childhood, such as being abused by school faculty and losing his father when he was an infant in World War II. So in an attempt to shut out these emotional scars, he socially isolates himself, building, again, a metaphorical wall around himself. And when you socially isolate yourself, that's usually an indicator that you're scared of the world around you, and that fear can quickly build into anger, and that anger can quickly build into hate. And this is purely speculation on my part, but I feel the Nazi imagery that is so prevalent in the movie adaptation of The Wall and Rogers' live shows is supposed to represent this hate that stems from social isolation. We have seen no shortage of mass shootings in this country carried out in the name of extremist ideology. A lot of these shooters have self-identified as incels, Nazis, fascists, etc., because these sorts of ideologies bring at least perceived legitimization to their irrational hatred of those around them and their irrational fear of the world around them. So when Roger is wearing a Nazi-style uniform on stage, I don't think he's just poking fun at the absurdity and irrationality of fascism, but is also cautioning the audience that they too can fall down into the rabbit hole to fascism if they shut themselves out from the world around them, much like Pink in The Wall. This may seem like unneeded analysis of The Wall, but I feel like context is important when understanding why Roger wears Nazi-style uniforms on stage, because it's easy to show footage of Roger's performances to those who are unfamiliar with The Wall's concept and say, look, he's wearing what looks like a Nazi armband, and he doesn't like Israel. Curious. His father was a World War II vet who died in the Battle of Anzio. Fascism took his father away when he was a baby, so he never got to know his father. His father never got to see any of his success. So I understand his intrigue in fascism and Nazi imagery. It's not because he actually supports these ideologies, it's because he was directly impacted by the fallout of World War II. And that's why Roger has been so vocal about his staunch opposition to Israel, because he sees parallels between Israel's treatment of Palestinians to Nazi Germany's treatment of Jews and other ethnic groups, minorities, and those they perceived as political enemies. I came across this horrible story recently where people in Gaza are literally now resorting to drinking polluted water and eating grass because there's nothing else available. Gaza is pretty much undergoing a famine. There is no convincing me that Israel is the good guy in this conflict. But anyway, I'm pretty tired of these celebrities and public figures in general who are calling a spade being labeled as anti-Semitic. The death toll in Gaza is now over 27,000. Thousands of those dead include children. And the Israeli death toll on October 7th was just over 1,200 people. That's also terrible, don't get me wrong. I don't condone what Hamas did in the slightest, but I've already made that more than clear in my previous videos about this conflict. But to call Israel's response to Hamas's attack disproportionate would be an understatement at this point. It's genocide. They don't give a fuck about wiping out Hamas. They only care about indiscriminately bombing Palestinians. Yet I'm supposed to fucking care instead that a musician is playing a character on stage. I am more than aware that Roger will be okay in the end. He is 80 and loaded. He was in one of the biggest rock bands of all time. But I still really hate this precedent that it's okay for music labels to drop musicians because they're critical of Israel, or movie studios to drop actors because they're critical of Israel. Like that one lady from the Scream movies. There's like fucking 8 of them or some shit, and if I'm correct, she starred in the last few Scream movies, and was going to star in the upcoming one, but then she showed solidarity with Palestine, and then she was dropped. But that ended up really biting the studio in the ass, because then the co-star left, and now the movie is in limbo. Not like I really care that much, though, because I don't watch those fucking movies. But still, it's disgusting that anti-Semitism is being weaponized to smear anyone who is critical of the Israeli government and the IDF. What's also mentioned in the article is at one point Roger planned to have an inflatable pig at one of his shows with a bunch of slurs scribbled onto it, and one of those slurs was dirty K slur, an anti-Jewish slur that I'd rather not say here. Again, all part of the show, all meant to highlight how far gone Pink is in his social isolation. It's like lambasting an actor for being racist because they played a bigoted character in a movie or a show that said the N-word. Even if the character's bigotry is not shown in a positive light whatsoever, much like how Pink's dissent in The Wall was not shown in a positive light whatsoever. Anyway, this was a fun video because I love yapping about Pink Floyd. They're my favorite band of all time and one of my special interests, so any opportunity to yap incessantly about Pink Floyd, I will lunge at. That's all I have to say. Bye-bye.